Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast, a podcast you come to when you're finally ready to take fantasy hockey seriously. My name is Nibbelink. I'm the creator of Apples and Ginos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. In this podcast, Evan and I are going to talk about some of the biggest hot shots and have-nots of the season so far. Let's get it. Well, tonight I have a new old friend with me. It's Evan of Trade Talks notoriety and fame. Evan, how are you feeling tonight?
Great, Nate. Thanks for having me on. Different to be on a show other than Trade Targets, but happy to be here.
Good stuff. Well, glad to have you. When Blake says that he doesn't want to do a show with me, then I get a little in my feelings, and I have to trial some new potential best friends. So that's what we're doing here tonight.
Make him jealous a little bit,
Yeah, exactly. All good relationships have to have that little element of jealousy, I think. Let's get into some newsies off the top, though. We got Charlie McAvoy missing Saturday's game. It was a personal matter. There wasn't really many details about it. So usually in these cases, that's a pretty quick turnaround. Usually just the one game or a couple games and they're back. So most likely scenario is that he's back early this week. But keep an eye on that for sure. You might need to make other plans for the early week if he is out for a little bit longer. Wild Bill William Karlsson suffered a lower body injury in Saturday's 4-3 loss to the Ducks. Won't get an update till Monday here when the Vegas Golden Knights practice again, but that'll be worth checking out because, Vegas was looking like one of the better streamers potentially this week, and in deeper leagues, Karlsson was definitely on the radar. Anthony Cirelli is still listed as day-to-day, did not practice here on Sunday. Dominic James has been up in his spot on the second line, has 4 points in 2 games there. I don't know if anybody's rushing out to add Dominic James, but he's doing the thing at the moment, and all of a sudden Tampa Bay looks like a cup contender again. So you got any interest in Dominic James in your deepest league, Evan?
Can't say that I do, to be honest. I'm not a fan of what Tampa's kind of doing with their power play, mixing it up all the time. I really wish they would just trot Hagel out there as the fifth instead of Bjorkstrand, get him net front like he needs to be. But yeah, Dominic James, I'll hold on that for now.
All right. Zane Parekh is now listed as week to week. They were waiting to get some more word on that, but seems like he's going to be out a while. Was placed on IR with his upper body injury, so we will see how long it takes for him to be back. In the meantime, Calgary has been trying a bunch of stuff with their power play units, so keep an eye on whether Uyghur or Anderson is running things from the back end. Dougie Hamilton is going to miss at least a week, but it's a minor injury, according to Keefe, quote-unquote minor injury. Dougie Hamilton, well known for missing time with minor and major injuries. So obviously, as a Luke Hughes roster, my big hope here is that Luke Hughes just pops off with the power play and they can't, in good conscience, ever go back to Dougie Hamilton. What about you, Evan?
Yeah, same. He was my trade target last week, and I think I said it too. It's like Dougie is so injury prone. I don't know what it is. He kind of got pushed up against the boards, and it looked like his knee almost got buckled a little bit. But yeah, thoughts and prayers to Dougie. But I am hoping for a Luke Hughes explosion as well.
All right. Joey Decord was placed on IR. Will miss at least a week, but could be longer. We don't really have a lot of details here either. It's an upper body injury. That's the NHL, folks. You get upper or lower body, and then you can infer whatever you possibly can from that after. BLD, though, Pierre-Luc Dubois had muscle surgery on his abdominal and adductor muscles, so sounds like actually a pretty major injury. He's going to miss 3 to 4 months there. These kind of muscle surgeries often have a very long recovery time. So yeah, he's going to be out for a good chunk of the fantasy season here. Connor McMichael has been the 2C with Dubois out of the picture, and the power play has been running Jacob Chikrin in the last couple of outings. So good news for Chikrin rosters, I guess, Evan.
Yeah, I mean Chikrin to the moon. I really like Jacob Chikrin, and this just almost ensures that he's going to get that power play time. He's definitely got the second best shot on that power play besides Ovechkin, as a left-handed option as well. But yeah, McMichael, I'm not sure what to make of because last year he kind of came storming out of the gates and did a lot of his work at even strength, and he's really not doing much this year. Only 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points in 15 games so far. But maybe this increased role will spark him a little bit.
For sure. I'm interested, but I'm not like adding him yet. Like he basically becomes a streamer of note for me now, and then maybe he can develop into something a little bit more than that. We've seen the proof of concept there for a decent amount of games, as you mentioned. So I'm at least much more interested now. Frank Nazar missed Sunday's game here against the Red Wings, but does still sound like he's day to day. Might draw in as soon as the Blackhawks' next game here. And then lastly, Cole Perfetti returning to the Jets lineup here on Sunday evening. Don't have anything to actually report from that yet, as that game doesn't start until 10 p.m. Eastern. We're recording a little bit before that. But good news for anybody who picked up Cole Perfetti in their drafts and have been stashing him on IR so far. The base expectation, at least for me, is that he's going to get back on power play, and I'm interested to see what he can do there. It's a good power play unit and should be even better with him on it. And if he can start to get things going with the second line as well, it could be. I don't want to say a big step forward for Cole Perfetti, but I think he could take a step forward in terms of his fantasy relevance this year.
Absolutely, yeah. I think his ice time's going to go up with that power play time, and the Jets have not looked exactly like they did last year. I think everyone was kind of expecting a little bit of regression because their power play and their team in general was insane. But he might be a little bit of the missing piece on that top power play. They had Alex follow up there, and he wasn't doing a whole lot. He's pretty fast and good at zone entries and stuff, but I think they need someone of his skill level on that top power play.
Totally agree. Let's dig into the meat of the episode here. Let's get into some hot shots. Off the top, we have to talk about Connor Bedard. I don't want to spend time in the hot shots just talking about all the superstars who happen to be scoring points in any given week, but we do have to talk about Connor Bedard leading the NHL in points after another 3-point performance here on Sunday. In the games prior to this, so the 5 games prior to this Sunday 3-point explosion yet again, he already had 10 points in his last 5 games, averaging over 21 minutes a night, 27 shots per 60, 14th individual scoring chances for per 60, 41st individual expected goals for per 60, 20th on ice expected goals for per 60 in those 5 games prior to today. He in the 15 games that he'd played prior to today, he was on a 120-point pace. That's going up again. What is the ceiling here for Connor Bedard at this point, Evan? If you had to put a point pace on him rest of the season, where do you think he'd land as of today?
I think you have to put him at 90 points, minimum. I think what he's doing this year is incredible. I think we all knew he had this type of skill and talent. It was kind of, does he have the pieces around him? He can pass the puck to actually put it in the net. And I'll tell you what, as a Tyler Bertuzzi streamer this week, I've been along for the ride with that. But yeah, no, I think it's amazing. A lot of people got him at extreme value in drafts. And so, yeah, it's really exciting what he's doing, especially on a Chicago team look at what Spencer Knight's doing too, just as a team in general in their power play. It's just been really lethal. So very exciting for him.
Yeah, that power play really coming alive has been a big part of it for sure. 3 goals on the power play today for them. Yeah, I think I believe most of what Bedard is doing here. Like anytime you have a big hot streak like this and he's on a 120-point pace, anytime you see that, you kind of obviously take that with a grain of salt. You don't really expect that to continue all year long. But that being said, like the minutes are there. And it does feel like they've found something a little bit with Burakovsky on his wing there. just a meshing of skill sets, and it doesn't even seem to really matter who the other winger is on that line. They've trotted out Ryan Green on that
Yeah.
line, who is a National Hockey League player who does exist, according to Hockey DB. But yeah, they also tried Bertuzzi there today, and that worked as well for them. So yeah, I think that the Bedard Burakovsky connection seems to be working. And that's just allowing Bedard to play a lot more free, I think, like just to play hungry, play fast. I feel like that's not a term you hear in hockey a whole lot, playing fast, but I do think it matters, especially for these like kind of offensive greyhound types like a Connor Bedard, like a Cutter Gauthier. Like allow them to get their wheels going, get them in space, and yeah, kind of build your system around your best players that way. It really does feel like I'm not a Jeff Blashill guy. I don't know how you feel about him,
No,
Evan, as a
no,
Red
not at
Wings
all.
fan. But if I am going to give him one kudos, it does seem like he really intentionally focused down what do we have to do to get Connor Bedard rolling, and the early returns look really good. I would concur with your 90-ish point estimate at this point, with upside for more. Like, who's to say that he really can't get to 100, especially if he's leading the league in points at this point in the season. Let's talk about some less rostered players, though, some players that you might be making more day to day decisions on in your fantasy leagues, though. Olofsson is an interesting one. Victor Olofsson. So he's got 5 goals and 8 points in his last 5 games, but he's been very streaky throughout this. He obviously had that huge game where he pops off for 5 points in a single game, but also has a 2 goal game and then a 1 assist game in the only 1 assist in the 9-1 win against Edmonton. Maybe that's a bad thing, not a good thing. Anyway, we don't need to litigate it too much, but interesting stuff. I do feel like it's going to be feast or famine with Olofsson, even if he hangs on to power play one. I'm pretty concerned that he doesn't hang on to power play one because Jared Bednar has continually rotated basically everybody not named Nathan McKinnon, Kale McCarr, and then Rantanen or Natchez, depending on which player is on the team at the time. And that's really been the MO for Bednar for like the last 5 years, basically. So, or how many? Yeah, I think 5 years is how
Yep.
long the unit's been together. But anyway, I'm pretty worried that as soon as Olofsson goes dry for, let's say, 5 games, then it's just over. And that's just kind of scaring me away from him. And the ice time's not really there. I don't know. Where are you at, Evan?
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it. As long as he's on PP1, he definitely is worth a roster spot. When he's on that power play, I think it does look better than when they've had Nelson up there. I don't know what happened to Brock Nelson, Blake's favorite, grumpiest man on earth, but he's very grumpy this year. He's not doing a heck of a lot with his ice time that he's given. But yeah, and Arturi Lehkonen is another good player in that spot. But I feel like, again, they're always kind of the fifth wheel on that power play, right? But Olofsson's actually doing something with it. So as long as he gets PP1, definitely worth a roster spot to me. But as soon as he gets bumped off, which I agree with your assessment that like if the power play goes cold or he goes cold, then it's likely they switch it up and then he becomes kind of a waiver player.
Yeah, it's just a spot where he feels more like a streamer level player to me. He's playing basically third line minutes with Drury and Landeskog. I mean, yeah, they're basically trying to turn this into a top 9, I guess, is really what's happening here with Brock Nelson, Nichushkin, Ross Colton as one line, and then Landeskog, Olsen, and Drury as another, just so that they don't have to overload the top 2 lines the way that they have for so many years. And maybe to some extent that's working, but all that it means is that Olofsson is averaging like, what is it, in the last 5 games here, 15 minutes a night, which is fine, but a good chunk of that was this 1955 he got in this 9-1 win against Edmonton. In the games prior to that, his maximum in the last what is this, yeah, in like the last 8 games his maximum was 1445. So yeah, it's just a tough spot to feel like you're going to get anything consistently from him. You're going to have some pop-off games, but you also, before you get the next pop-off game, he could be off the power play one. So I'm okay with him as a stream, but not really anything more at the moment. Move over to Vegas. Ivan Barbashev has been popping off. 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points in his last five. Just under 17 minutes average time on ice. Playing on that top line, Jack Eichel and Mitch Marner is the last one there. The last lines that we have. So that's obviously going to be a pretty good spot for a human crash course like Ivan Barbashev to apply his trade. So, what's your temperature on Barbashev, and are you interested in rostering him not only as like a good streamer for this Vegas week, but as something a little bit more? Is this a guy that could actually stick in our lineups for a good chunk of time here?
Yeah, I think so. I think Paul Bissonnette calls him like the human cigarette machine on Spit and Chicklets. Just goes in, bangs, gets the puck to Eichel. I really think that like he just belongs there with Eichel. They've had really good chemistry since he's gotten there. So he bangs, he hits, he can get bunches of points, especially at even strength. The lack of the power play obviously hurts him, but I mean he can still be like a 50 to 55 point player. Things go the right way for him. So yeah, I think he's definitely rosterable. And especially when Vegas has, better matchups or better schedule, I'm definitely looking at him. I think he's rostered in a lot of spots. I don't think he's on everybody's waiver wire. So yeah, I definitely like Ivan Barbashev.
Yeah, I am growing more and more interested in what he's got going on here. Like Vegas as a team just has such a great offensive environment going right now at 5v5 that you kind of don't need to have that top power play to be fantasy relevant, which is not something you can say about a lot of teams league wide. Barbashev 122nd in shots per 60, 113th individual expected goals for per 60, 79th on ice expected goals for per 60 over these last 5 games. He's on an 88-point pace at the moment. So I'm into it with Barbashev, at least for the moment. And, I reserve the right to reframe my opinion, especially if he gets down on the third line at some point. But at the moment, I'm in on Ivan Barbashev. Let's move over to Los Angeles here, actually, and talk about Corey Perry. So before this game today, Perry had 4 goals and 6 points in his last 5 games. And then he goes out there today and pops another goal and another assist. He's a member of the 5 forward power play there in Los Angeles. He's getting some run. I don't know how many people thought Corey Perry going to another new team would be yet again a significant member of the fantasy hockey collective conscious, but here he is, 6% rostered on Yahoo, and he's doing stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean the worm at 40 years old, getting in there and doing stuff. I mean, it's just one of those guys you can't discount. He knows his role. He plays it well. That front guy in that power play, I think it definitely works for them better than Kuzmenko at this point as well. So, I mean, if it just keeps working, I don't see why they would change it up. I always wonder with LA, like what they're going to do with Drew Doughty. I don't know that he really should be on that top power play anymore, but Brant Clark would be a consideration for sure. But I think Corey Perry's role on it is solidified, especially with what he's doing. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what my temperature is on Corey Perry. I don't know that I'm picking him up in any spots yet for like a hold, but definitely in LA schedule weeks. Like I feel like in a lot of leagues, again, people are just doing that. I don't think a lot of people are picking up and holding him at this point because they don't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe it, a guy of his age. But I mean, when you start to look at it under the hood, you're like, man, like, is this really a thing? In these 5 games before today, 15-15 average time on ice, 6th in shots per 60, 1st in individual expected goals for per 60, and 6th in on ice expected goals for per 60. Really good numbers under the hood for Corey Perry. And yeah, I mean, I'm not ready to like announce that he's gonna have like a 60+ point season at this point, but I am very, very interested in rostering him at the moment and seeing how long he can stay a member of that power play. Basically, I think I would frame it as this: as long as he's on that power play, I'm kind of into it. I think he's going to get cycled through the forward lines. I don't think he can really count on a ton of even strength production, but I can see a world in which he, paces at like a 20 to 25 point pace on the power play. And then if he can just piece together another 20 to 25 points at even strength, now you're talking about a 45 to 50 point player in your deeper leagues. He's only 6% rostered. I'm not saying like in your 10 team leagues, you got to rush out and add Corey Perry. But Yeah, in some deeper leagues, I think Corey Perry could be a legit option, not something that was on my bingo card in the year of our Lord 2025. Let's move over to Toronto now. Nick Robertson has been doing stuff as of late. Before this game that's currently ongoing, he had 3 goals and 6 points in his last 5 games, over 15 and a half minutes average time on ice, 74 shots per 60, 27th individual scoring chances for per 60, 119th in individual expected goals for per 60, and 110th in on ice expected goals for per 60. It's been kind of a, a long time coming for Nick Robertson here in Toronto. He's kind of been the whipping boy in a lot of cases, and you can see why. Like, he tends to handle the puck like a grenade half the time. Pucks just fly off his stick. He's like toe picking on the ice. He's like a little bit of a chaos agent whenever he's got the puck, but he also has a world class shot, and you can't really deny that part of him. And he's actually kind of developed a nice little playmaking piece that's come on display as an assist in the game that's ongoing currently against Carolina right now. And he's grown into a bit of a much more dogged forecheck style that Berube clearly likes and clearly has asked him to play. It's not really been a part of his game in years past, and you could see it coming last year and this year especially. You can see the feet moving much more constantly for Robertson, making himself a much more annoying player to play against. And so for all those reasons, I'm kind of into it with Robertson. I feel like it's kind of a bit more of a similar scenario to Perry, where it's definitely a deeper league pull. But like, I picked up Robertson in a deep league in one spot, trying to get some points there. I think you can do worse than Robertson at the moment. Obviously, there's a pretty good chance at some point that he's moved off out of the top 6 again, off of that Tavares line that he's on currently. But as long as he's there, as long as he's getting some power play time with that second power play unit, and as long as he's got the coach's good favor, I think the skill is actually there for Nick Robertson.
Yeah, I mean, if you play with Tavares or Austin Matthews at any point, like, definitely sign me up. I think he definitely has, like you said, the shot. Watching it, some of his goals are really nice. He's one of those players, like, you look at and I'm like, man, Nick Robertson, what is he, like 28, 29? He's only 24 years old. I don't know why I thought he was older than that, but because he doesn't look it. But I feel like he's been on the Leafs forever. But yeah, it's interesting what he's doing so far. So yeah, if he can stick in the top 6, definitely worth a look.
All right, and one more Nick here before we close out the hot shots. Nick Blankenberg over there in Nashville. I talked a lot about Brady Shea and his good underlying numbers in the last pod with Blake, and I probably should have mentioned that Nick Blankenberg is the guy who's actually scoring the points at the moment. 1 goal, 6 points in his last 5 games, and almost 22 minutes a night, which is probably the more interesting piece. Be one thing if he was scoring a bunch of points with lower minutes, and we wouldn't be too excited. But he's getting a good amount of run there in Nashville. He's 93rd amongst defensemen in shots per 60, 96th in individual expected goals for per 60, and 150th in on ice expected goals for per 60. So the underlying numbers are not too good here. Definitely not nearly as good as Brady Shea's were. But they are kind of splitting up these power play units now a little bit and doing a little bit more of a 1A, 1B kind of scenario. In fact, in the last game, it was actually Blankenberg's unit that got the majority of ice, like 60, 65%, if I'm just eyeballing it at the moment here based on his time on ice versus Shea's. So, yeah, I mean, Nick Blankenberg, Evan, another name that we weren't really thinking about talking about, but 6 points in the last 5. Are you interested?
Jumping off the page at me, yeah. I had Roman Yossi in a few spots and threw him on the IR and picked up Brady Shea, and yeah, he's not doing much with it, even though his underlying are looking decent. But yeah, Blankenberg actually is. Nashville as a whole, I'm still just not a believer this year. I kind of thought they might turn around, but after this small sample size, the games played that we have, it's very clear that I think the rough patch is going to continue for them this year, and they're going to probably try and sell off like O'Reilly and maybe some others. So, yeah, I mean, in the short term, for sure, definitely worth a look while Yossi's out. But outside of that, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a short-term thing for me as well with Blankenberg. But yeah, I think there are probably, again, some leagues out there where this is a player that somebody should be thinking about if they haven't already. Because, I mean, it's defense too. Like, where are you getting defense production from in a lot of these spots, right? And they need him right now. They need anybody with a pulse who can put the puck on the net and generate something. 1% rostered on Yahoo. Nick Blankenberg
It's
wanted
crazy.
to get a little bit deeper here in these hot shots, and we've got some players who are hot who are not very highly rostered out there in the fantasy hockey streets. So hopefully we found some for the people. I want to talk for a minute about the Patreon. So the supporter tier, $2 a month, gets you Apples and Ginos Patron League eligibility. Basically, at this point in the season, that just gets you on the wait list. We've already had a few managers say that they're not going to be able to support their APL teams this year, and we've been able to fill those spots with APL waitlist members. So definitely get yourself on that waitlist, and you might be into the APL as soon as this year. At the $8 a month tier, that's the Apples tier, you get that APL eligibility, but you also get access to patron-only Discord channels, patron-only live shows. You get the show notes, including the show notes for this episode we're doing right now. And you also get the Apples and Ginos player evaluation tool, where you can look up Cutter Gauthier's beautiful face and his beautiful stat line and just fawn over it for as long as you need to make yourself feel better about your day. That's what I do in my spare time. All right, let's continue on, Evan, with the have-nots. We've got some doozies here. So Frank Nazar, we mentioned, injured and didn't play today, but even before that, things were not going Frank Nazar's way after a hot start to the season. Connor Bedard is just like somehow sucking all the life force out of Frank Nazar and all his points as well, because Nazar had 0 points in his last 5 games, about 17 and a half minutes average time on ice, 80th in shots per 60, 94th individual expected goals for per 60, 183rd in on-ice expected goals for per 60, and before he was injured, he was bumped off the top power play unit. So where are we at with Frank Nazar? Is he still a hold after he comes back from this injury? Are you going to move him into your lineup again, or are you thinking that it might be time to say goodbye to Frankie Nazar?
I think it's getting close to being time. I have him in the APL, and he's center only in that Yahoo spot. And yeah, I don't know. I think that him getting moved off the top power play definitely hurts. I think he can make his way back on there, to be honest. He's definitely has the talent to do so. And we know him and Bedard are real close. So the talent's there. Obviously he had that really hot start. I don't know if like this kind of injury, I think it was just in the recent game that he was technically injured. So I don't think that had anything to do with his underlyings or anything, but I think it's getting close. I think it's getting close to where if you need the streamer spot, then you could do it, not feel that terrible about it, but I'm still trying to hold him if I can.
Yeah, I don't feel too dissimilarly there. I will say Chicago only has 2 games this week, one on the off night on Wednesday here, which is probably when Nazar's making his return if all goes well with his recovery the next couple days. And so maybe it's a spot where you get Nazar in for that Wednesday, and then you base your opinion off that one game and see how things go in that game. And because, yeah, then the next game they play is on that super heavy Saturday, so he might not even factor into your lineup, especially as a center only. So if that's the case, if he's not even going to crack your lineup on the Saturday, then I definitely think you want those days back. You want to use that roster spot more effectively, get some better streamer in there. We've got streaming options in the back end of the week. So I do think that this is probably a wait and see till Wednesday, see how that game goes. If he absolutely pops off, maybe it makes the decision harder. If it doesn't go his way again on Wednesday, if he's still off the top power play and the rest of it, which, I mean, that would be my baseline expectation at this point, given how good the power play was again here today against Detroit. So if that's the case again, then it's probably one and done on my squads for Frankie Nazar. Over to New Jersey, where Nico Hischier has just a single goal in his last 5 games. On the season now, he's got 11 points in 15 games, 60-point pace. He's still skating, over 20 and a half minutes average time on ice in these last 5 games. It's not that, but 380th in shots per 60, 368th in individual expected goals for per 60, 248th in on-ice expected goals for per 60. Where has the offense gone for Nico Hischier?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know why he's not shooting the puck as much, to be honest with you. Like, I remember last year, he really was the focal point of that power play and shooting the puck. And even again, like just his like shorthanded and even strength, like he would be facilitating that too. I don't really have an answer, to be honest. I'm almost like slightly concerned that he has some sort of injury. Again, I'm not saying that he does, but like, why else would he not be shooting the puck like this? Kind of crazy. I think you'll find this entertaining, Nate. I sent an offer to one of my buddies in a kind of APL similar points league, but with face-offs counting as point one. And I threw Nikas in a deal for Nico Heischer. And this guy told me to get bent. I mean,
Wow.
where are you at with that? I mean, like, I thought I was offering him, a deal. Get off Nico Heischer. He's not doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, in a face-offs league, Nico Heischer is definitely a guy who takes every important draw for the Devils, so I can definitely see that factoring in. But yeah, I mean, hard to argue with what Natchez has been doing in Colorado too. So that definitely seems at least fair, if not weighted Natchez's way. For myself with Heischer, I am worried, I will say. This, like, it's not like it's just the past 5 games either. On the season, 286 shots per 60, a little bit better on the individual expected goals for at 151 there. But it's not like it's just the last 5 games that have not gone his way. It has been a bit the whole season, and he's been relatively efficient to get to where he's been to, which is also kind of concerning. So overall, I am pretty worried about Heischer, and the only thing that makes any kind of sense to me is injury, like underlying injury that's just not being talked about. For him to just not be shooting the puck, it's just really bizarre to think that something has changed so drastically here that Nico Heischer is not one of the most bankable fantasy assets like he has been for the past number of years. So that part is really hard to figure out for me, but it's not like he's not in the face-off dot. Like sometimes you think guys not shooting the puck like wrist stuff or something like that, but he's taken face-offs and definitely wouldn't be doing that if his hands were messed up or had some injury like that. And so again, I don't really know what to make of it, but it's officially in worrisome territory for me here with Nico Heischer. I'm not doing anything about it at this point. I've got Heischer in a couple spots, and yeah, it sucks, but I'm not like gonna drop him or
Gotta
move
ride
on
it
from
out.
him for something then less than what he's done in the past number of years. So realistically, I think it's hold and wait and see with Heischer until we get something more concrete. Maybe there is an injury, maybe there's not, but either way, I just don't think you have a lot of options if you have Heischer on your roster at the moment. Another player that could be similar is Braden Point, who has also really struggled to generate any points. And it's not like Tampa Bay has struggled. Like Kucherov hasn't had a great start by any means, but Braden Point is having just a really weird start by his standards. 1 goal in his last 5, almost 19 minutes average time on ice. On the season, he has 9 points in 15 games. That's a 49-point pace for Braden Point. I don't know the last time we saw, like, I'd be interested actually to see how many 15 game stretches over the last, whatever, 5, 10 years with Braden Point that he's actually scored 9 points or less in a 15 game stretch, because it can't be all that many. That being said, like, I feel like it is a little bit just because it's the start of the year, so it looks so bad with Braden Point. His underlying numbers don't look that bad to me. Are you doing anything different with Braden Point at this point, Evan?
No, I don't think so. I mean, he is like one of the most bankable players in fantasy, similar to like Nico Heischer. He was until this stretch. Tampa's just a weird team, I feel like, to start, because they're picking it up a little bit, but I mean, guys like Anthony Cirelli and Brandon Hagel, their ice time, they were getting more ice time, and I feel like John Cooper's spreading it out a little bit more instead of giving these top guys all the run. What's interesting about Braden Point, like, I just look at his just general stats like over the past 3 years, and I think I've talked about this previously, like his point totals, his goal scoring, and his shots have all decreased in the past 3 years. And I feel like, I don't know like what to make of that really. I think now that they have other pieces like Jake Gensel, like Cirelli and Hagel stepping up, they don't have to rely on him and Kucherov as much, at least at even strength too. But I definitely, I'm concerned about Braden Point. But I don't think you're trading him, at his low point here or anything. Obviously, you hold him. I would never drop Braden Point. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think Braden Point is probably a buy low for me at the moment. 109th in shots per 60, 67th individual expected goals for per 60, and 81st in on ice expected goals for per 60 over the last 5 games. On the season, he's 33rd in individual expected goals for per 60 and 39th in on ice expected goals for per 60. So the underlying numbers have remained pretty strong for Braden Point in that regard. So I do think he is more just of a buy low candidate right now who's been getting pretty unlucky, where he's normally factoring into a pretty big percentage of Tampa's offense. He's got a 60% IPP on the season, 9.7% shooting percentage. He's normally like double that, basically.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with Braden Point. I do have one team that is Nico Hischier and Braden Point, and that has just truly been an awful run the last couple of weeks here, but I digress. Let's move over to Utah. Logan Cooley, just 1 goal in his last 5 games. The last I checked on this Mammoth Senators game, he didn't have any points here either. I'll confirm if that's still the case. He did get an assist on Nick Schmaltz's goal here, so he's got 1 more point to add, but definitely a cooling off for Logan Cooley, who had been absolutely on fire before this point. Still over 18 minutes average time on ice, but 376th in shots per 60 and 345th individual expected goals for per 60, 173 on ice expected goals for per 60 in this 5-game stretch before tonight. What do we make of Logan Cooley, who we were all excited about, had that huge 4-point game, the hat trick in the first period? What do we make of it now that things have kind of cooled off and normalized a bit? Do you still think that Cooley is in line for a big pop-off point-per-game season, as many projected, or do you think that we should tamper expectations a little bit more?
I'm more on the side of tampering expectations, at least not to a point per game pace. I think he's probably closer to a 70-point player this year. He is getting that top power play, which is really nice, and they haven't moved off of that. Utah as a team has kind of slowed down really, and I think that may be part of it. You know, if they start to get going again in his line and everything, I think it'll come. But yeah, Logan Cooley was one of the ones where, like, you know, when he started popping off, I feel like a lot of people were trying to sell high on him too. And I think a lot of people knew that obviously that wasn't going to continue when he was getting like 5 points, hat tricks left and right. But I think you can still expect like a 70-point player moving forward and a good, healthy season out of him. I don't know that he's quite to that point per game pace yet for me.
Yeah, I want to believe in Logan Cooley's point per game pace. I think it's definitely possible, but still a relatively young player in the league, and it's hard to be that consistent to be a point per game player in the league. So I think 70 plus points is definitely in the cards. Point per game maybe on the higher end of what we can expect. That being said, you know, in this game against the Senators, he is playing with Nick Schmaltz and Clayton Keller at even strength, so that could be a better place for him to apply his trade. They are trying to do some weird stuff with these power play units, like Dylan Guenther on the so-called second unit, but the second unit's been getting more ice time in this game against Ottawa. So make of that what you will, I guess. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a one-off, but yeah, either way, some weird stuff going on as they try to get things untracked after a really hot start there in Utah. At the end of the day, if I have Logan Cooley, I'm not moving off of him unless somebody's trading me. Like, I guess, you know, if somebody trades me Nico Hischier for Logan Cooley, I'm probably doing that. But yeah. I don't think you're getting that offer anytime soon in most leagues anyway. So in most spots, I'm just holding on, even though it's not looking good at the moment, because he's still a incredibly dynamic player in a really good spot to put up some points with the Utah team that will be scoring a lot of goals more often than not over the course of the season. All right, I got 3 defensemen here to round out the have-nots. The first one's Luke Hughes, who has just 1 assist in his last 5 games, almost 26 minutes a night, though. Really, really big minutes for Luke Hughes. Now we've got the Hamilton injury. What are we doing with Luke Hughes at the moment? At the moment, I think it's pretty obvious, right? Dougie Hamilton's out. You're hanging on to Luke Hughes. You want to see him pop off with this power play deployment. But has your perception of Luke Hughes changed based on the slow start here? Just 7 assists and no goals in his first 15 games of the season.
Not really. I think a lot of people, myself included, in a few spots, maybe overdrafted him a bit, but I think the value will be there at some point during the year. It's just a tough roster right now because of his low perif totals, like in Cats leagues especially, but like in points league, he's not doing much peripherally. He's not really shooting a ton either, but the talent's there, and I think he's going to get run. This whole, minor injury from Dougie, like, who's to say that, it doesn't get re-aggravated, they don't try and trade him, etc. So I still believe in the player. You can definitely see in a lot of games, like, he's trying, and he actually is doing quite well defensively, I think. And I think that's been a big focus of his game so far. But you can see him getting frustrated on the bench, slamming his stick and stuff. So he wants to be better. I think he will be. And I think, like you said, if he can just get a few power play points posted here in Dougie's absence, then maybe Keefe can kind of say, listen, like, this is working, and we keep him up there. So, yeah, I'm definitely holding Luke Hughes until the wheels completely fall off.
Yeah, I tend to agree there. I think Luke Hughes is really a dynamically talented player, and maybe they're asking him to kind of mature a little bit more into a true number one defenseman this year, and that's a little bit different from what he's been asked to do in years past. And so maybe there is an element of that there, but his power play time, I'm hoping, kind of unlocks his offensive game a little bit more. I will say, like, this last stretch hasn't been his best stretch in terms of the underlying numbers, but on the season, still up there in terms of most of the on-ice stuff. That's really where Luke Hughes' contributions offensively shine. 45th Corsi 4 per 60, 45th scoring chances 4 per 60, 44th expected goals 4 per 60. Still pretty high up there, despite not getting top power play much this year. So I think my estimation of the player hasn't really changed. I am perhaps a little bit more worried now that Keefe is just asking him to do things a little bit differently this year rather than be the kind of full-time offensive threat that he can be. Next up, Thomas Harley, just 1 assist in his last 5 games, 23.5 minutes average time on ice, 107th in shots per 60, 50th individual expected goals 4 per 60, 99th on ice expected goals 4 per 60 in these last 5 games. This is coming while Miro Heiskanen, we could have easily put Heiskanen in the hot shots. He's got a goal and 7 points in his last 5 games before this game that's currently ongoing, which I think Heiskanen has a point in this game as well. So it's another situation where we 2 assists actually for Heiskanen. So yeah, he's doing well again tonight. So it's a situation where we really like the offensive upside for Harley. We'd seen it when he got the top power play, how he was popping off point per game levels when having the top power play. And so there was easy to see the potential of him just having a massive season. What was harder to see was Miro Heiskanen just popping off in his own right. Coming into this game where he's got 2 assists, he had 12 points in 15 games, 66-point pace on the season. His underlying numbers look terrific. So where are we at with this Dallas defense? Where are you at with Thomas Harley? I've seen some people talking about dropping Thomas Harley. Are you getting towards that way, or are you still confident that he's going to return at least some value for fantasy this year?
Yeah, he's too good individually and offensively to drop, definitely. I mean, and again, it's just, Dallas's power play has been unbelievable. So it's tough because with Miro Heiskanen on the top power play, they're looking at it like, well, he's producing and the team's producing, so why switch anything up? Yeah. And I think they know they have the 1-2 punch there. He signs that extension as well, so they're locked into him. I really do believe in the talent of the player, and I think we all want to be head coaches and put the best offensive players for our fantasy teams in the best places to perform. But I want to give myself an early pat on the back, Nate, on calling the Miro Heiskanen PP1. I did not draft Thomas Harley anywhere, and I did for Heiskanen. I wasn't sure that he was going to even get it. He just dropped so far, I feel like, in drafts, and Harley shot up just because we saw what he did with the top power play last year. But definitely still a hold. I still think he's going to return value for you. But yeah, it's interesting to see what's going on with Miro Heiskanen here.
Yeah, I think that fairly sums it up. I mean, in terms of the even strength, like Thomas Harley is playing more even strength minutes than Heiskanen. It really is just that power play where Heiskanen is getting the extra boost offensively, I think. I mean, I think he's probably, I haven't done a side-by-side exactly on the even strength numbers, so I think that Heiskanen's outpacing him by a little bit. Yeah, 1.47 points per 60 for Heiskanen at even strength versus 1.2 for Harley, so Heiskanen's doing a little bit better at even strength there as well. But all that to say, like, I still think Harley's a terrific player. Right now on the season, he's got 1 goal and 9 points in 15 games. It's a 5 goal, 49 point pace for him. I think the goal total comes up, but like even without top power play, I think Heiskanen is, or Harley rather, is a 50 to 55 point guy on a Dallas team that should not struggle to score a lot of goals, especially when Duchesne is back and they're fully healthy. So overall, I think Harley is a guy that you can't drop in any league. No, we're not getting that nuclear season that we were hoping for when we drafted him, if you drafted him. But it is a spot where I don't think you can drop him. Unless you're in like an 8 team league, he's definitely better than anything on your waiver wire, in my opinion. But Miro Heiskanen, yeah, what can you say? If you drafted him, you're loving life.
Yeah, and I think Thomas Harley too. Like to your point, like when Matt Duchene comes back, you remember last year, like the Stars' second unit was actually kind of getting to work a little bit more. I mean, they're playing the first unit a lot more now, but I think that may have been because of the injury. So I think when Matt Duchene comes back, if he ends up on the second unit with Sagan and Bork, like they could still get some PP points that way too.
That's very true. Very good point. Last one here, Seth Jones, just 1 assist in his last 5 games, still skating over 24 minutes a night. He has just 6 assists, no goals in 15 games for the Panthers this year, a 33-point pace. And the underlying numbers have not been terrific on the season. Like the on-ice stuff still looks pretty good, as it will in Florida, especially because he hasn't come off the top power play at any point this year for the Panthers. So he's still 27th amongst defensemen on ice expected goals for per 60, but he's not shooting a lot. It doesn't seem like he's being leaned on despite the other injuries to the Panthers. So where are you at with Seth Jones? I've seen him come up. People are asking me, can I drop Seth Jones? And I have seen him dropped in some people's leagues. They're sending me their waiver wire, and Seth Jones is out there. So where are you at with him rest of season? Are you adjusting expectations for Seth Jones at all?
I'm not sure. I think I'm adjusting expectations a little bit, and I think a lot of us had him projected much higher, especially at his draft value, thinking that Barkov was going to be healthy, and not necessarily knowing the Tkachuk news maybe early on. It's one of those things where I think, and Florida's doing this weird thing with their power play too. Like every game is something different. I mean, the only consistent player on that team really is Brad Marchand, and I guess you could say Sam Reinhart, but the Carter Verhaeghe, Sam Miscavige, Sam Bennett on and off, then Lundell on the top. So I don't know what to make with Florida. I did drop Seth Jones yesterday in a 10-team league. That's a 10-team league, though. So I think if you're in that spot, I think you could drop him realistically. 12-team and above, I wouldn't. Like you said, with thinner defenseman options on waivers, I think if Tkachuk comes back, like it's really going to spark this team and maybe get a true top power play on there. I don't know. I think I'd hold them in spots like that, but I did drop him in a 10-team. So yeah, I'm curious to see what you think about that.
Yeah, I think that Seth Jones is still in a good spot. I think the offensive situation is still relatively strong, as evidenced by the on-ice numbers. But I am kind of concerned that he's just not doing anything himself to generate offense, when you would think that the team would actually want him to do some of that, given the fact that they aren't getting it as much from the forwards with Barkov and Tkachuk out. So I feel like it is kind of a spot where he is not playing well. Like the team is actually kind of doing all right around him, and he is the problem with his production currently. And that's not a comfortable spot to be with a player on your roster where you feel like he is actually the problem. And it's not like we love our buy lows, we love our Braden points where you're like, actually, like under the hood, I think he looks okay and it should bounce back soon. It's a little bit less comfortable when you're like, well, the team is doing it, he just sucks. So I don't feel comfortable about Seth Jones. I didn't actually end up with him on any rosters, mostly because he was kind of in that mushy middle, and it was a tough spot to be. Just going after defense in general in those middle rounds in a lot of my drafts. So I didn't end up with him anywhere. It felt like he was overdrafted in a bunch of spots. Like I saw him pulled up into 4th rounds in some spots because people just had to have a D in that round. And that was obviously a mistake in retrospect. I think those people would agree. I am still holding on to Seth Jones. As you mentioned, like 10-team, it starts to be a conversation. Depends who's out there. Depends what else you got on your roster, that kind of thing for sure. In 12-team, I still can't drop him. The situation's too good. If he's off the top power play, then yeah, that's a signal to drop for sure, in my opinion. But in the current situation that he's in, I just don't think I can drop him in kind of your more standard 12-team leagues. Last question for you, Evan. You had to know what's coming. Luke Hughes, Thomas Harley, Seth Jones. Rank them.
Ooh, man. As much as it pains me to do so, I'm going to say Thomas Harley, Luke Hughes, Seth Jones.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think I can argue with that too much. I think they are pretty similar, quite honestly. Rest of the season, I think Harley's got the safest floor, and he's got a pretty good upside if he ever does get on that power play one, Heiskanen injury or Heiskanen finally slowing down, whatever the case might be. So Harley does have a lot of that juicy upside. Luke Hughes has that juicy upside too, but he would have to get and hang on to power play one in order to really achieve it. So I think Hughes and Seth Jones are probably, if I'm just doing like a projection as of today, rest of season, what I think is most likely to happen. I think Hughes and Seth Jones probably look pretty similar from here on out for the rest of the season. But I think Hughes has the pop off potential that Seth Jones just really doesn't seem to, given his slow start here and not being able to generate a whole lot individually. All right, we got through the hot shots. Now we've got to get in and have nots, and now I got to talk about the environment, a new segment this year where we're talking about a situation, a line that's popping off, a team that's popping off. In this case, it's the Anaheim Ducks. We've got to talk about the Anaheim question. I've been getting this question a ton from people. How sustainable is what Anaheim is doing at the moment? Which players are sustainable? Which players are not sustainable? So Anaheim, for context, they lead the league in all strengths goals for per 60. They're second in shooting percentage. They're third in 5v5 goals for per 60. So they are absolutely lighting the lamp this year. That being said, they're 20th in expected goals for on the season and 7th in the last 5 games per 18 skaters. You can see this in the player evaluation tool. If you are an Apples tier Patreon member or above, you can check that out courtesy of 18 skaters. And then in terms of the environment, just to fully flesh it out here, on the season, they're 21st in expected goals against and 26th in expected goals against in the last 5 games. So they are really, truly playing some high event back and forth, who can outscore the other team kind of hockey. And I mean, it makes for tremendous cinema. I'm loving the Ducks. Anytime the Ducks are playing, I'm like, oh, I wanted to catch a piece of that game because it's so fun to watch at the moment. What's been your experience with the Ducks, just from a viewing experience? And do you have any Ducks on your team? Let's start there.
Yeah, no, like you said, they're definitely the most exciting team. Um, I'm randomly asking people that know very little about hockey, or maybe a little bit. Some of my friends that are more football fans. Who do you think's the best team in hockey right now? It's the Anaheim Ducks. You would have never guessed it. Quack quack, right? Like, I mean, it's crazy what they're doing, and like you said, it's a lot of high event hockey. They're just, I mean, Joel Quenneville's just letting the leash off these guys, and they can just go in, rush the zone. Obviously, the players that you're really looking at is like the Leo Carlson, Cutter Gauthier. These guys were drafted, really late and just popping off with insane numbers. Jacob Trouba scoring the overtime goal the other night was like you said, perfect cinema. And then the post game, the interview, they're interviewing him, and Chris Kreider comes and like does like a look at him like, this guy, why are you interviewing Jacob Trouba? So yeah, it's really great stuff. I don't have a ton of Ducks. I've got Troy Terry in a spot, and then I do have Jackson Lacombe in a spot. And I'll throw it to you again because I think that a bit of what they're doing is sustainable in terms of like their offensive production, not to the extent that it's going off like 7 goals a game, every game. But I do think that players like Leo Carlson, Cutter Gauthier, getting this ice time, getting a true top power play is really exciting for their rest of season projections. I don't think that any of us could have really seen it going this well to start. But Jackson Lacombe, it's interesting because, I feel like all of the defensemen there are getting a piece at even strength. Like Jacob Trouba is doing really well. Olin Zellweger recently is kind of getting a few assists as well. Jackson Lacombe, is not getting, the assist that you would think with this type of goal scoring. What's your temperature on him? Like, are you still interested, still really the same type of expectations moving forward? And then obviously getting into the rest of the environment there.
Yeah, I think Lacombe is the kind of most puzzling member of the Ducks, how everything can be going so well around him, and yet he's struggling to put up points. He has just 5 assists in the 14 games on the season, 29-point pace. That being said, like I remain like completely unworried about Jackson Lacombe on my teams, and a lot of it is to do with the underlying stuff. So last 5 games, even if we take that sample size, still 25 minutes a night. They've signed him to this huge deal. They're going to get their money's worth out of Jackson Lacombe. He looks so good too, like just visually, he looks tremendous every time. He's making terrific reads. He's so good defensively already. He's a true number one defenseman in my mind already. And that just means so much to me in terms of the safety of the player. Like, even if he was off the top power play, I feel like, I mean, he hasn't gotten much there this year already, obviously. So, even if he's off the top power play, I think he could still have a fantasy rosterable season in most cases. I do think it's mostly just bad luck that has got him to this point in the season, 14 games in, to only have 5 points. So that's mostly where I'm at. I mean, 47th shots per 60, 14th individual scoring chances for per 60, 42nd individual expected goals for per 60 in the last 5 games for Jackson Lacombe. So some pretty good underlying numbers there still at an individual level, and then 52nd in on ice expected goals for per 60. And that's pretty much in line with the other defensemen. It's not like he's, just getting outpaced by other defensemen. And that's with like he's getting those minutes, right? He's having to face every other team's best guys. Basically, every single even strength minute he's on the ice is against true top lines and true superstars in the league. And he's taking those minutes and he's turning things positive for his team. He's got a 19% IPP on the season. Last year, he was a huge part of the offense and he was being relied on to be a huge part of the offense because nothing else was working. And this year, he doesn't have to be. And so maybe there is a case where his IPP is down this year. Like that part might be more sustainable at a lower number this year than it was in years past. That might be true this year, but it's still such a better offensive environment that you have to be excited about what it can be if things start to go his way. So I'm not really concerned about Jackson Lacombe. I think that, I mean, you talked about Joel Quenneville. He just completely flipped the Greg Cronin system on its head. Basically, everyone just is like thinking offense. The second the puck possession gets flipped, Anaheim as a 5-man unit, they're all just streaking towards the net every single
Flying V.
time. Yeah, flying V. He couldn't draft it up any better if he tried. But I think a big part of it too, like players can make mistakes and feel free to make mistakes, and that they don't have to look over their shoulder every time they make a mistake. Like Greg Cronin's system, if you make a mistake, if you take a bad penalty, if you flub a puck at the blue line and a guy goes in on breakaway and scores, like you're benched the next game, and it's just such a hard way to play the game. There's a example for Ricky Bennett Seneke on the PDO cast, which is a great listen. They get really into, these are guys who actually watch hockey and like understand what they're looking at. So if you want to check that out, you definitely should. But they had an example where he made a bad mistake and it led to a goal. But he comes right back out and he makes a skill play and it ends up in a goal for the Ducks. And that's just an opportunity that no player would have gotten from Greg Cronin last year. And it's just such a breath of fresh air for all of these guys. A few players that I really want to shout out here, though, like Leo Carlson is a god at this point. Like the underlying stuff just looks insane. If you're watching on YouTube, we've got Mark Barber, 18 Skaters, his 5v5 stuff, the on ice expected goals, the expected goals percentage. He's got the highest on ice expected goals for percentage amongst all the Ducks. He's limiting chances against. I think it's just because you can't get the puck off this guy's stick. Like it just comes to him and he holds on to it forever and then scores a goal at the end of it every single time. So, yeah, Leo Carlson might be the single biggest level up across the entire NHL this year. Maybe Connor Bedard has something to say about that, but Leo Carlson is in that conversation for sure. He looks like a true superstar to me at this point. Troy Terry doing his thing. Those two guys are just playing exceptionally well off each other too. They're just hanging onto the puck. They're moving in space and creating all sorts of problems in D-zone coverage for the other team. They're playing so well together. And then you got Cutter Gauthier. the greatest hockey player of all time, doing his thing. He's just kind of like an offense only guy, just going end to end every single time. Either he's going to turn it over and it's going to come back the other way, or he's going to score a goal. But the speed, the shot, like it's all there. There's a cool article. I'll link it in the show notes for the Patreon members. But NHL Edge stats and all the stuff on Gauthier is just insane. Like his max skating speed, his 20 plus mile per hour speed burst, his hardest shot, like all this stuff is just so high up there. And so I really love watching Cutter Gauthier play and what he's been able to do this year. I think a good chunk of this is sustainable. I told somebody in the Discord, I think it's like 70% sustainable at this point is where I'm at.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they're running hot. For sure they're running hot. But they're also playing a style of hockey, this rush style of hockey, where it's just end to end all the time, where like the chances are going to be even like it's just going to be classified as a scoring chance for, right? But that scoring chance for is on a rush, and it's like, the goalie sliding across, trying to make a save on a cross crease kind of pass off the rush. Like those goals are going to go in more often than not. And most teams just don't generate that many of those chances because they're playing a little bit more conservatively, and the Ducks just don't care. They're going pedal to the metal every single second of every single game. I don't see them stopping that anytime soon. You see it in the way that they played against Florida, a team that has dictated pace of play to so many other teams across the league over the last number of years, and the Ducks just said, no, we're playing our way and you got to match us. And Florida just couldn't do it with their current personnel, and that was how that game went. And so I think it's really impressive what Anaheim is doing and what they're pulling off with this personnel. Olin Zellweger from the back end, I haven't even talked about him, but his underlying stuff looks insane. If Olin Zellweger was on power play one and getting even a little bit more minutes, he's been having decent minutes. I think Zellweger is plenty rosterable in a 12-team league, and if you got power play one, he could be in line for a really big season, actually. So Zellweger is a guy that you definitely need to have on your radar for fantasy as well. All that to say, I think Anaheim is doing a lot of stuff that's actually pretty sustainable. They're running hot for sure, but I do think that the Cutter Gauthier's, the Leo Carlsons, the Troy Terrys, the Chris Kreiders. I think Kreider has fit in perfectly. I think all these guys, these top end guys, are here to stay. Are they going to be like, let's look at the point paces here. 135 point pace for Carlson, 105 for Terry, 82 for Kreider, 105 for Gauthier. Yeah, those are going to come down. But like I said, like 70% sustainable. That puts Leo Carlson above point per game. That puts Terry at close to point per game. That puts Gauthier at close to point per game. I think all of that might actually be sustainable. So I'm a pretty big fan of what's going on here with the Anaheim Ducks. Any final thoughts on the Ducks, Evan?
Yeah, I mean, if you're wondering if it's sustainable, Nate, listen to these last four games and tell me if this is good. Beat the New Jersey Devils 4-1, Florida Panthers 7-3, Dallas 7-5, and the Vegas Golden Knights 4-3. Those are some pretty good teams to beat up on. And at this point, Greg Cronin is just a distant memory. The bad man can't hurt you anymore. It's amazing what's happening with the Ducks. I'm super excited to just watch their games. Like I have like a small sample size of Anaheim Ducks on my fantasy hockey teams, but they're the quintessential. Like if you could just have a fantasy hockey team of all Anaheim Ducks, you'd want it right now. So
yeah. Yeah, last thing I'll say, I think this is just such a good case study in what a coach can do for a team. We saw it last year with Columbus when Dean Evson went in there, totally revamped that. When we identify these teams with really bad coaching situations and they change the coach, then we should get excited about what every player on that team might be in their best case scenario, because we're seeing it with the Ducks. We'll see it again with another team. We're actually kind of seeing it with Dan Muse in Pittsburgh. Maybe that's another environment that we could dig into in a future episode. But yeah, I just think it's really important to think about the impact of coaching for fantasy and what a change in coach can really do for a few key players for fantasy purposes. All right, that was a lot of fun. We should recap. Oh, one more thing. I forgot. Under the hood. We got to get under the hood. We got to talk about Evander Kane. Man, Evander Kane, this is This is not something I expected to be talking about. Like last 5 games, Kane has 3 goals, an assist, 4 points, 18-24 average time on ice, pretty good stuff. He's second in shots per 60, eighth individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 21st individual. What did I say? Eighth individual scoring chances 4 per 60, and 21st individual expected goals 4 per 60. Maybe that's what I was going for in the end anyway. 104th in on ice expected goals 4 per 60. This is coming with second power play time. Got a little bit of a look there when Connor Garland was out, but Garland's back. So second power play for Evander Kane. In the last couple of games here, 1926, 2041 average time on ice, or not average, just time on ice. He had 10 shots in one of them and 5 shots in the other. To me, like, I'm kind of into what Evander Kane is bringing here at the moment anyway. I'm not saying that he's going to have like some 70-point season or 40 goal season or anything too crazy, but I mean, I think he can do a lot worse in a lot of leagues than Evander Kane right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like a lot of people drafted him late and then kind of dropped them after a slow start. And then he started scoring some goals. And like you said, putting these underlines together. He's top line now, too, with Pedersen, which is really interesting. But I mean, I think you're kind of seeing the player that he is. I mean, he hits, he shoots. And I mean, Vancouver sure needs a lot of that. They need someone that's going to shoot the puck outside of Brock Besser, because we know Elias Pedersen isn't doing it. So, yeah, I'm really into Evander Kane in a lot of spots as well. I picked him up in my 10-team league even, and I'm not really regretting it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a spot. Banger Cats, like he's going to get you at least a hit per game, if not more. The shots are going to be there for sure. Even without the top power play, he's going to be pretty good, I think. But if he gets the top power play and hangs on to it, then he could add a little bit more to that total. So I really like Evander Kane. I think it looks to me just like he's kind of figured out the system already, which is something that you can't really say for a lot of players in new systems. I think, yeah, you're definitely seeing evidence of it in a lot of player movement and coach changes across the league. There are a lot of the players that we talk about in these have-not segments that are just in new places and struggling to figure it out with a new coach or a new system. But it seems to me like Kane is fitting in just fine. I mean, this is a team that needs his offense, right? They need him to be doing some of this stuff for them. They knew what he was when they traded for him, and he's providing all that. We weren't sure that he still had that in the tank at 34 years old, coming off some fairly big injuries, right? But it really does seem like he's kind of back to where he was before all that started. And I mean, he's in an age 34 contract year, right? Like he doesn't, his contract's up after this year. If he wants to continue playing in the NHL, he needs to put something on record this year that's going to make people sit up and say, yeah, I want that guy on my team next year. And I think he is the kind of player that people will want on their team if he is doing this kind of stuff. So I think Evander Kane, it might just be like this kind of perfect storm of the team needs him. It's kind of like not a top end team, so they need his offense. They need him to play the way that he basically always has for his entire career. They kind of need what he brings to the table, and he needs to provide it in order to continue to have an NHL career. And it might just work out perfectly for everybody involved, including fantasy managers. All right, last item of business, recapping the head-to-head streamer deathmatch. And Blake's not here, and we can't crown the winner just yet because Jackson Blake and Jordan Eberle are still playing at the moment. Just double checking to see if there's been any updates. Oh no, I'm seeing Carolina scored since the last time I looked.
He's got an assist. Was that updated since you last checked?
Yeah, he's got an assist. So as of right now, I believe Jordan Eberle is still a few points up on Jackson Blake, but unfortunately, I can't crown myself the winner live on the podcast. That is too bad. Blake was up 2-1, so hopefully Jordan Eberle hangs on for me against Jackson Blake, but we'll have to wait, and maybe I'll talk about it on Puzzling Players tomorrow. But yeah, we'll have to wait. By the way, Puzzling Players, 8:30 p.m. every single Monday. I go live here on the Apples Ginos YouTube. Talk about the most Puzzling Players league-wide. Come join in the comments, ask any questions, and let's get to biz. Next week in that Dead Streamer Deathmatch, Blake went with Alexis Lafreniere. Crazy choice. I went with Kyle Palmieri. Amazing choice. And we'll see who wins there. All right, Evan, this has been great. Thanks for coming with me on this ride. I think you know that the people should join the Discord community. Come talk to you. Come talk to me in there. They should also like, rate, review, subscribe, comment. All that stuff really does help us out. But that's going to be all that we've got for this episode. So hopefully it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick and 18 Skaters. Many thanks to Matt Creamer for supplying the music for the podcast. That's it, folks. Much love.